Hello? Hey! Thank you! How are we this evening? Good? Good, we're doing well? Okay. So I've actually been here for a while, and I figure it's about time to tell you a bit about myself, okay? I'm gonna take a seat because I'm feeling a little nervous. Isn't that great? Okay, so on July 6, 1994, I was born to Tim and Carolyn Johnston in Edmonton, Alberta. Ta-da! I think it was the Misericordia Hospital. I don't really know where that is. I wasn't very old at the time. When I was about 2 years old, I distinctly remember sitting behind a chair and praying for a younger sister. So you can imagine, I grew up in a Christian household. If you have questions also, I would ask that you raise your hand as opposed to speaking to your neighbor. Thanks. I prayed for a sister when I was about 2 years old, and when I was about 3, I got one. Her name is Rachel, and she's delightful. When I was about 6, we moved up to Fort McMurray, which, if you don't know, that's in northern Alberta, and it's very cold. That winter, my brother Nicholas was born. When I was about 11 years old, Rachel became quite sick and developed an illness. I think it's called C1q nephropathy. It's a kidney disease that, I'm not entirely sure what it does. It leaks proteins, and so they can tell by your blood and your urine, and it's not a good thing. And unfortunately, you will have it for the rest of your life. It's also quite new and quite rare, so very minimal research has been done on how to cure it or what really causes it. So when Rachel was diagnosed, they didn't really know what to do, and they started doing what all good doctors do, and they ran tests. And they gave new treatments, and then different treatments, and then more tests, and super exciting. And being the good little Christian girl that I was, I prayed! Yay for prayer. Prayer is really great, and sometimes it doesn't work out the way that you expect it to, because God doesn't always work the way that you expect him to. So we prayed. I prayed, my family prayed, our church prayed, our close friends and family prayed, and then we waited. And we waited some more, and we kept praying and waiting, and when I was about 12 years old, we moved from Fort McMurray to Ottawa. Now at this point, I was starting to get a little bit confused as to why God was not reacting the way I expected him to. See, I had done what I thought I was supposed to do, is I loved God, and I had prayed. And then I waited, and I kind of felt that that was what the equation was for God moving and acting in your life, right? But Rachel wasn't getting any better, and in fact, we had moved, which meant that all of my friends and people that I had invested in for the last 6 years were completely ripped away from me, and I had very little emotional support outside of my family. I was thrown into a new school, in a new environment, in grade 7, which I don't know how easy grade 7 is for any of you, but for me at the time it wasn't so nice. So at this point I began to question, why is God doing this? Why is God, who I was raised to believe is a loving guy, doesn't just love us but is love? Why would he do this to us? Better yet, how could he do this to us? How could he make Rachel sick? How could he move us across the country and completely wipe out things that I had cared about for so long? And I decided one of two things must be true. Either this God doesn't exist, or he's a liar, and I want nothing to do with him. And so at 12 years old, I walked away. I had had enough. I stopped believing in God. Kind of funny because I was mad at him. Kind of hard to be mad at something you don't believe in. But I kept going to church because that was just something that we do on Sunday mornings. And I threw myself into 6 months of depression so dark and heavy I barely remember any of it. My strongest memory from the beginning of grade 7 is the first day of school and crying a lot in my room. Yeah, great times. Funny enough, before any of this had happened, I'd been reading a book series called Dragons in Our Midst. I don't think any of you have read it, but excellent. I highly recommend it. I think it's fantastic. It's a really good contemporary fantasy series. And in it, one of the characters goes through a really rough time, and she quotes scripture. And I asked my youth pastor at the time if he could find that scripture for me, because they didn't put a reference. And it turns out it's Psalms 139, 7 verse 12. I read it, enjoyed it, and promptly forgot it. And then after all of this had happened, and 6 months into having just moved, God started to speak to me again. This God that I decided did not exist or was just a really bad guy started speaking to my hardened and darkened heart. And he said, go back and read that scripture. And the way that scripture goes is, let's see if I can remember it. Yeah, my Bible's over there, that's okay. For where can I go from your spirit? Where can I hide from your presence? If I go up into the heavens, you are there. If I make my bed in the depths, you are there. If I rise on the wings of dawn, if I settle on the farthest edge of the sea, even there your hand will guide me. Your right hand will hold me fast. If I say, surely the darkness will hide me and the day become night around me, even the dark will not be dark to you, for the night shines like the day. Basically, to me at that time, that meant that it didn't matter where I went. If I was on one side of the country or the other, there was nowhere I could run that was too far for God. It didn't matter where I was spiritually, if I was at the highs of just coming out of like YC or something, or if I was sitting in the pit of hell that I had made for myself. God was still there. And slowly he started to speak to me again, and he said, my child, I have not left you. You turned away from me, but I did not leave you. Come back. And so I did. And slowly, step by step, God started walking me out of this depression I had thrown myself into, and I started to get better. And even now, I still get bad days, but I have learned that even if you choose not to believe in God, his plan still works, and it still makes sense, and he is still sovereign, and he's still there, and there's nothing you can do to separate yourself from him. His plan still makes sense, and he is always with you. And so even on my bad days, I know that he will provide a way out for me. Even Rachel has actually started to get better. You wouldn't know looking at her that she's ill. There is providence in all situations. God's plan works even if you can't see the way out. And so if there's one thing that you take away from this, it's that no matter how dire the situation, it's amazing. God is bigger, and there's nowhere you can go that's too far. Thank you.